first, live, local. This is Fox 12 Now.
Hello everyone, this is Fox 12 Now. I'm Greg Nibbler. As always, thanks for joining us. We do appreciate it. We have many different things that we cover here with this show, and so a lot of conversations to be had. You can check out all of those segments on the Fox 12 Oregon app or at kptv.com. Just click on that Fox 12 Now tab. Right now, though, we are talking about the Oregon Zoo, and in particular, some money they are giving out for grants for conservation efforts. These are efforts that are happening around the world, and we want to talk about that, find out how that program works, and find out what some of these different programs are that they are helping in turn. And joining us right now, we have Shervin Hess, who's a conservation manager for the Oregon Zoo. And thank you for joining us here today. Always love talking about what the zoo is doing and some of the work that you do. But this particular side, I have to admit, I don't know a whole lot about, and that's why it's nice to have you on here to talk about this. So when it comes to these conservation efforts and the funding that the zoo gives out, can you talk about that program and just how that works?
Yeah, thanks, Greg. Thanks for having the zoo on the show. You're right. There's like two, it's almost like there's two Oregon zoos. There's the one everybody know about that you come visit, and then there's this other one where we're working out in the wild here in the Northwest and around the world, doing things to try to stop animals from going extinct and restoring those populations and helping people and animals, whether they're polar bears or elephants or orangutans, kind of live peacefully together in the wild. And so much of that comes down to partnerships, and that's where this funding comes in.
Yeah, looking at that, you mentioned a wide range of animals right there. And so when it comes to the funding side of things, so this is funding that the zoo gathers and then disperses out to these different organizations. How do, I guess, just to cover that side of it, how do you acquire the funding, and then how do you decide who receives the funding for all of these efforts?
Yeah. So I guess it all starts with our conservation strategy. And really what we're trying to do is three things. One is restore wildlife populations. The second is advance coexistence. So that's really how wildlife and people live together. The third is really increasing our community's engagement with nature, getting them to spend more time with wildlife and nature. That's the priority. We're working in three parts of the world right now. Almost 90% of our effort goes into the Pacific Northwest because it's where we can have the greatest impact. But we're also working in Borneo, which is one of the most biodiverse places in the world. It's home to elephants, orangutans, clouded leopards, just incredible tropical forest ecosystem there. And then the Arctic, and that partnership is really focused on polar bears. So the funding comes from largely our community. So our development arm, the foundation, raises some money, and that is through our community here, donations, philanthropy. Some of it comes through admissions. So there's a surcharge on admission. So every time a person walks through the gates, they're helping do this work of fighting extinction. So it's pretty awesome. And we're really lucky that some of these partners that we've had them for 25 years or more. So they're the ones leading the effort in the Arctic, the Borneo, and including here in the Northwest. Yeah, that's broadly how we are funding these partners and kind of where they're at in the world.
Man. Yeah, I mean that's such a diverse group there that you're looking at and talking about. I guess maybe going to talking to some of the specifics of that. So like the Borneo research. So the Oregon Zoo contributes funds to that. What are some other ways that they engage with what's going on there?
Yeah, no, it's a great point because it really does go beyond funding, and we really try to leverage the Oregon Zoo's strength because we have kind of two superpowers, I guess, if you will. One is we, of course, have a lot of people who are super skilled at working with animals, right? We have wildlife care professionals here, both in how you care for animals and also how you provide that veterinary care, right? So, for example, in Borneo, one thing we do every year, we send our keeper staff, elephant keeper staff over there to help take better care of elephants that have been orphaned as a result of conflict with people. So we have our elephant care specialists go over there, improve their practices, basically make a better life for those elephants. But we're also working with organizations that are helping keep those elephants safe in the wild to begin with, so they don't get orphaned, right? And that is a lot of working with local communities, helping them understand elephant safety, helping create ways for them to be compensated if elephants destroy their crops, that sort of thing. And another one that we're doing in Borneo with a group called Hutan, which is really amazing, is reforestation. So this is important because it's not just helping wildlife, it's taking climate action. So there are, agriculture and palm oil has removed a lot of the original forests from Borneo. But what we know from science is that as long as you let the wildlife come through, use that palm oil land, they can survive in that landscape, as long as they can get from one point to another. So one amazing thing that we're seeing is that group Hutan works with palm oil companies to build forest corridors through the middle of those plantations, almost like a wildlife overpass, So it gives all these animals, and it's almost like the who's who of endangered species. It's like sun bears, clouded leopards, pangolins, Asian elephants, orangutans, allows them to travel from one forest to another without running crosswise with people, essentially. So it's really a diverse kind of effort there, where we're working with orphaned animals, we're helping people stay safe around animals, and then we're taking like landscape level action so that entire ecosystem is healthy and functioning.
Wow. I mean, so it's not just the funding that's going out there, but it's also that expertise. So, when we talk about the expertise at the Oregon Zoo, what makes it so special there, or what is let me rephrase it just a different way. What is it about the Oregon Zoo expertise that's so valuable when you're going out there for these different efforts?
Right. It's pretty rare to have hands-on experience working with a lot of these animals, right? So there's the care aspect, of our keeper staff, for example, knowing, they know these animals almost better than anybody because they're working with them daily, right? So when you're working with elephants, and we have, I think, more than 60 years of experience with elephants, you can go back out there and transfer that knowledge. Everything from, how you feed a baby elephant that's been orphaned to what are the warning signs when you see a big male bull elephant starting to get aggressive, so that you can kind of avoid coming into conflict. That's one, but we also have staff that have deep scientific expertise. So have been working in that region for a long time, and it's really kind of so much of conservation is about people, working with people, making sure that people kind of reduce the threats and are able to do what it takes to make sure that they can live peacefully with wildlife. So it's these long-term relationships, the hands-on expertise with animals, the veterinary expertise with animals, and really making those connections. And there's one other big thing, and it's our reach. We have something like 1.4 million people visiting the zoo every year. We have 6 million on social media. And these people aren't necessarily in it for conservation or environmental reasons. They're all united because they love animals. So the opportunity is, of course, to show them this is what we're doing, this is what our partners are doing, and you can be on this journey with us if this is important to you, making sure that wildlife will always be around.
Is that something that's pretty unique to the Oregon Zoo, having that? I follow the Oregon Zoo's social media channels. I know 6 million people do. Is that something that's pretty unique for a zoo to have that kind of a following?
We're pretty consistently ranking in the top among zoos. There are other zoos that run pretty amazing social media programs, and we work closely with them. There's a little healthy camaraderie and competition there, but Oregon Zoo, I would say, has an outsized social media presence. And I think you could say that.
Yeah, honestly, you post some amazing stuff all the time, and everybody likes looking at some animals. we've got some examples here, just like the polar bear. So you mentioned that effort, and when it comes to that, to the Arctic and these animals that specifically the Oregon Zoo, you mentioned the elephants, polar bears. When it comes to the polar bear side of things, is that some of the expertise that you have that maybe other people don't have that you're able to share and able to utilize there for these conservation efforts?
Yeah, so talk a little bit about that partnership was great because you're showing a little bit of Nora and Amelia Gray at the Oregon Zoo here. We partner with a group called Polar Bears International, and a lot of that partnership is focused on coexistence in the Arctic. So the biggest threat to polar bears is the loss of sea ice, climate change. So what happens with climate change is there's a reduction in sea ice. Those bears need that sea ice in order to hunt for seals, right? So they're not able to catch seals. It impacts their body condition. It impacts how many cubs they're able to have every year. So that is what the concern is. But another issue is that as bears are spending more time on land, they're going into places that they have never been before. And in Canada, for example, one thing we're seeing is they're going into communities that are not used to seeing polar bears. So this is a safety concern for both the bears and people. So one thing we do with PBI is work on safety programs in those communities, basically helping out from everything from how garbage is collected to basic awareness for folks in terms of what you do if you see a bear, how you avoid conflict, certain areas to avoid, and really bringing them up to speed on these things that folks who have lived with polar bears have known for a long time. We also, one pretty amazing thing that we do at the zoo, and this is kind of a cool thing, is polar bears are notoriously hard to study, right? They live in this super inhospitable place, the Arctic, hard to get to. They're super huge, hyper carnivorous animal that's very dangerous. And there's all these questions scientists have about how climate is impacting them, right? What we're able to do at the Oregon Zoo, because of the trusting relationship our keeper staff have with these bears, is answer some of these questions that you're basically not able to in the wild. One example is, what does it mean for bears to have to swim longer distances, right? We actually have at the zoo, a lot of people, you wouldn't know this when you come visit, but there is an underwater treadmill in the polar bear area. And this, so what scientists do is the bears go in there, they can breathe in there, but we're able to collect the air that they exhale and analyze that to understand their metabolism. What does it mean for them to, how much more energy does it cost bears in the wild when they have to swim longer distances? We also help develop a new kind of collar that has an accelerometer in it, sort of like what's in your cell phone. And because of that collar that we calibrated at the zoo, scientists know remotely what a polar bear is doing. Is it waiting? Is it walking? Is it sleeping? So those are just two examples of ways that the polar bears at the zoo, Amelia Gray and Nora, but also Conrad and Tassel before them, were able to help advance science and really advance what we know about polar bears so that we can better protect them in the wild.
Wow. I mean, and that's pretty incredible, all happening right there, and because of that expertise. And these are funds and, that knowledge that institutional knowledge that you have with all of the employees there and the handlers. Looking for, for the public when it comes to these conservation efforts, what do you think is the most important thing for people to know about what the Oregon Zoo is doing with these funds?
Well, I think it's important for the public to know that we couldn't do that without them. It's because of this community support. I mean, we've been around since 1888, and it really is our superpower, is our community support. It's just amazing how people how beloved our organization is in the community, and how we see this passion to take action for wildlife, right? One example of something folks can do. One partnership we didn't touch on is the effort to bring sea otters back to Oregon. So we partner with a tribal-initiated organization called the Alaka Alliance. So up and down the West Coast, we used to have sea otters all up and down the West Coast until about 100 years ago, when they were all wiped out by the fur trade. Most of them were wiped out. We've been able to bring them back to almost to everywhere, every state except Oregon. And so the effort now is to do that. And the reason why it's important is because sea otters hold the health of the kelp forest ecosystem in balance. A kelp forest is like a forest underwater. It provides homes from everything from tiny shrimp to the huge gray whales that feed on those shrimp. It's also important for like commercially important fish like salmon and rockfish. And it's a huge climate carbon sink too, these kelp forests. So without sea otters to eat the things that eat the kelp, which are sea urchins for the most part, those sea urchins can just mow down the kelp. So really, by restoring sea otters, you're helping an entire ecosystem. We want our community to be able to support this effort, to really help push the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to make this happen for sea otters, but also the people of Oregon. They're super culturally important to the coastal tribes of Oregon. And it's something we all stand to gain. So when there is a call to action, we want our community to get involved, to really speak up on behalf of the wildlife, because really this is about the health of everybody, not just one animal. It's about the health of everybody here in Oregon, the Northwest, and globally when you look at these species that we're working with, whether it's sea otters in the Pacific Northwest or elephants in Borneo or polar bears in the Arctic. We're all impacted by the same thing. So when we're helping those species, we're helping ourselves too.
Wow. I mean, perfectly well said right there. Well, I mean, congratulations on being able to, get this funding out to help with that and further those efforts that you're working on, and just getting this, and getting the knowledge out there too for everybody to understand, because as you mentioned, it's all intertwined. It's all part of the same thing, and really interesting stuff that you're doing there. For people who are watching and want to learn more, what's the best way for them to find out more about these projects that you're working with?
Come visit the zoo, because when you're doing that, not only are you going to be learning about some of these conservation programs, but actually your admission, getting you in, or even your membership fee, is helping fund this work all around the world. It's a totally direct way you can take action for conservation. And it's fun too. How often do you get to make a donation and have an amazing day out with your family and friends and loved ones? So I would say a visit to the zoo is a pretty fantastic way to support these efforts.
Love it. I think we may be visiting out there pretty soon with Fox 12 Now. So, Shervin, thank you very much for joining us today, spending some of your time to talk about this and explain how this all works. I think it's really valuable and important, and just appreciate your time, and thanks.
Thank you, Greg. I appreciate it.
You bet. And for everybody watching too, this is Fox 12 Now. In case you haven't seen us before, thank you for joining the show. We have lots of segments, conversations, different things that we cover here on the show. You can go to kptv.com, click on the Fox 12 Now tab, download the Fox 12 Oregon app on whatever platform you're on. You can watch everything there, and all the different very interesting things. Sometimes they're deeper dives on news stories. Sometimes it's breaking news. Sometimes it's talking about the Oregon Zoo, conservation efforts, a wide range there that we cover. So thanks for joining us. We'll sign off right now. I'm Greg Nibbler. This is Fox 12 Now.